Hi, this is Kit, and this is my build of a Saint Rose of Lima costume for All Saints Day. So what you do is you start out with a swath of fabric that is as long as your child is from shoulder to feet, and as wide as they are from arm to arm, and you fold it into quadrants. So it's in fourths right now. You lay your kiddo down so that you can just trace out your sleeves, and then how long you need the gown to drape. So I'm just using a washable Crayola marker to do that tracing. And then after that, you're able to go ahead and cut it out. So I'm just finishing up to make sure that everything connects. Well, I figured out folding my fabric, which is an old sheet, into a half is going to waste a lot of fabric. So I went back, traced the pattern onto butcher pepper, and then traced that pattern back onto a portion of fabric that was closer to the edge of the fabric, so I would be wasting a little bit less. I am going to use some of the excess fabric from this to create a veil at the very end. So I wanted to be able to use as much fabric as possible to have it available to me, and waste not, want not. So after you've cut that out, you pull the whole thing apart, and you can see that it is attached at the top of the sleeves. You have the full opening at the base because of the fold at the into the quadrants at the beginning. And at this point, you are wanting to sew the right sides together up the bottom of the sleeves and down the sides of the basic gown. So I'm pinning it together here flat so that it's prepared to make those stitches very carefully. So getting that all pinned together so it is easy to sew. And then after you've stitched up the sides, you will do your hem, which is what I'm doing here, is stitching up the hem on the sleeves. For this build, I used old sheets that we had, which was like a great flannel sheet. I'm not sure that it's super authentic, but I figured it was basic enough that it did look to be like a nun's gown. The icons that I saw of Saint Rose of Lima showed her in black. So if you're able to get like a black fabric for the gown and the veil, it's probably a little bit more authentic. But I sacrificed authenticity to economy for my family, which I think is probably an okay decision in the end. So the gown is very basic to build. The next part that I'm going to show you is the wimple, which is the little like white fabric that goes around the face, hiding the hairline and the neck. So I'm using a little Barbie doll to kind of show you what you're measuring on a physical little person-sized thing. And I'm trying to sketch out on paper the 4 different things that you need to measure to create a wimple. So the first measurement that you need to take down, which I have as measurement A, is the measurement around the face. So for my daughter, I did all the measurements earlier in the day before she left for school, and that measurement around the face was 18 inches. The next measurement is from the chin to wherever you want the wimple to drape in the front. I was making like a very small, simple wimple. So for that measurement, my daughter was 5 inches. The next measurement, I'm kind of sketching it here, but it's going to make more sense if you see the profile. It's going to be the measurement from the hairline at the top of the forehead all the way to the back of the wimple, which for my daughter was 18 inches as well. So 18 inches around the face, 18 inches from forehead to the back of the wimple. And then the final measurement that you need to take down is actually around the shoulders. So that is measurement D. And I believe it was 26 inches when all is said and done. So you can see I was modeling that measurement on the doll. 28 inches. Here, like how the measurements are applied. So the A is the top. So this whole thing lays out into a trapezoid with a curvilinear bottom. Now this is diagrammatic, so it's actually not going to be proportionate to what you'll see in the actual fabric, at least for what I was making for my daughter. I think it really specifically matters what dimensions of the person that you're working with. You'll see how it's a little bit different on the fabric itself, but that gives you an idea of like what you're measuring and where it's applied. So I'm moving into the fabric at this point, which I'm using a really fine, super stretchy, very slick white fabric. I like the stretchiness because it's more accommodating with the face and forgiving on any, anything in the measurement that doesn't quite fit. So I'm actually sizing it and making the pattern folded in half because it is symmetrical and it keeps the curve symmetrical, which is important. So I'm measuring it folded in half, which overall is 20 inches folded in half is 14. So I'm measuring the A at the top, which is half of 18, so 9 inches, with a tiny little 5-inch spur up there. So you can start to see already the pattern does not at all match the diagram that I sketched. So I'm going to kind of roughly form a curve between the bottom of that piece, which is 18 inches long, up to that straight 5-inch portion. So it looks a little bit odd here. So I'm cutting along that curve, and then I'm cutting off the straight 5 inches. And you can sort of see the basic shape of that trapezoid with the curve on the bottom. So this shows it with the edges hemmed, and then you sew the A portion together. You can see that there. And so when it's all sewed together, you can really see how that covers around the face and covers the hair and drapes very nicely. So that's going to work perfectly for my daughter, as you'll see when she models it later. So at this point, I wanted to create the little circle thing that goes kind of across the shoulders and drapes over the chest and the back. I am not sure what this is called, but I'm using the remainder of that stretchy, slick fabric, and I'm just going to create a big kind of oval using up the rest of the fabric because I don't have any need to save it for any other use. So I'm being very careful pinning the fabric together. As I mentioned a moment ago, it's super slippery fabric that I'm using. So I wanted to make sure that it was pinned together so I would have as symmetrical of an oval as I possibly could. So here I go, cutting the oval into place, and after I remove the pins, you can kind of visualize what it's going to look like on the gown. So there it is. And I needed to cut a little hole for the head. Now, because I'm using such stretchy fabric, I didn't need to cut much of a hole. I'm just actually even cutting a tiny little slit, and it'll stretch over my daughter's head quite well. So I'm just making sure that I'm in the center of that oval, and I'm just cutting, I think actually even just like 3 inches, but you can see how much stretch that fabric has there. So at this point, I was ready for my daughter to do her first fitting. So with a ponytail in her hair and everything, it kind of fits a little bit oddly with that wimple, but you can see how it goes around the face and falls quite nicely. So the final piece for making this costume is the veil, which I'm using the rest of that gray sheet to create. So I have the fabric folded in half and then in half again, and this is just to make it a little easier to cut a semicircle out. So I'm flattening it to make sure that I don't have any puckers, that I have as true of a half circle as I can possibly get. And I'm also cutting it along the hemmed edge of the sheet because then it's one less thing for me to have to hem later. So using my radial cutter to cut that out quickly. And you can see that half circle laid out. And then the final part is hemming the edge, the raw edge, so that it's clean. And that is the veil, just a nice little semicircle. And I measured the length of it on my daughter already, so I knew how long I was going to need it to lay. So the gown is done. So she can be any basic nun or saint, just add whatever you want. But for her, we're making this Rose of Lima. So this is actually a crown that I made last year, so I can't show you how I assembled it. But I basically got a bouquet of plastic, fabric roses, and taped them with like a floral tape onto a crown. You can see with that on the head, she is truly ready to be Saint Rose of Lima for All Saints Day this year. And this project really didn't take a lot of time, and it looks like quite nice and authentic now that it's all together. So hopefully this encourages you to go out and make your own saint costume. Happy All Saints Day!